Hey everyone, the good, the bad and the buggy here, talking about Argo, or Project Argo, depending if you've been in the beta or not. So, first things first, what is Project Argo?
It's basically a 5-on-5 tactical shooter. It's very similar to Counter-Strike in a way, and also blended with Arma at the same time, so you have full control over your character, you can move your arms, legs, your positioning. It's really good for that, it helps you lean around corners. But then with the smaller team sizes, and it's sped up a lot from Arma. As you can sprint, you can use your sights in your gun, you've got silencers, you can customise your class a bit more, and then all you have to do is complete the objective. But in most game modes, you only get one life, so it resonates for both games, but it kind of comes in the middle in a really interesting way.
I think it's fair to say if you're comfortable with Counter-Strike, you'll be comfortable with this.
Yeah, definitely, especially with like some of the game modes like Clash and Raid, where you only get the one life, and so you've got to take it a little bit slower, you can't just run and gun, but there are game modes where you can just do that until all your lives are over.
So, as well as the game modes, there's also like a skill tree system. So in the game, you level up as you do things, so complete missions or all that and whatnot, and each time you level up, you'll get a skill point, which you can put in a skill tree, which will unlock further levels of equipment. So like there's different tiers of assault rifles and machine guns and whatnot, and tiers of sights and stuff like that. And when you've unlocked them, you then purchase them with in-game currency that you get, again, alongside XP by doing missions, completing objectives and all that.
Probably worth saying that it's a free-to-play game, so the only way to level up and get all this equipment is solely by playing. You can't pay to get the extra things.
Yeah.
You can only get XP and currency for playing, which is quite nice. And if you want to pay, you can pay a £10, I think. Yeah. Customizable clothing, which add absolutely no impact to the game. If anything, putting your backpack on your character will be a hindrance since you're now bigger and you'll be easier to spot. But if you really want to go...
I think it's more as a kind of like donation thing, really. It's like a sort of like, yeah, this is really a donation, but we'll give you a backpack if you fancy donating to us.
I'm not really sure what I prefer, another camo helmet myself, but you get a lot of free things. But I'm not entirely sure why there's the currency that have been added to it recently. It basically will just slow down progression, so you can't like reset your skill points and just all of a sudden unlock the machine guns, and next day I'm going to reset again and unlock all the sniper rifles just because you spent all your money. Yeah. So it slows it down in that sense, but I'm not entirely convinced that it needs that system. Yeah,
just to clarify, in the skill tree thing that I mentioned earlier, you can reset your skill points whenever you like. So if you've gone down a certain route and it's like, oh, you've got all assault rifles, and you're like, oh, actually, I want these light machine guns. Well, you can reset it and allocate those points you spent towards that tree. But it now costs the in-game currency to reset as well. So there is theoretically a hard limit to how much you can reset.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. I don't think it works for me. I did like just mixing up my class depending on how I wanted to play that day. It was quite nice. It was just nice being able to change from what I wanted on that daily basis, because I found that sniping is often one of the best things to be doing, just because you get a better scope. You can sit at greater distances and engage people who are hiding behind bushes. And bushes are amazingly good to hide in this game. Yeah. So you will fear the bush, basically.
Well, that should definitely be a tagline for the game, fear the bush. But I agree with that on the Clash game mode. So before we get into that, we should mention there are 3 game modes, Link, Raid and Clash. And with Link, it's sort of like a mini capture the objective kind of game, but it's relatively close quarters, so it's not like you'll really be having like proper sniper battles through the game.
The maps are a lot more compact. You fight over 3 main objectives. You both have your node that you've got to defend, which will get you points. If you capture the enemy team's one, it denies them points, or you can fight in the middle for like a bonus node.
Yeah. But we've found that the bonus node generally isn't really worth it.
Yeah, if you just capture the enemy's one while defending your own, there's a greater chance of you winning the game. Because by capturing their node, you deny them being able to capture the bonus node anyway, making it pretty redundant.
Yeah. So while I personally enjoyed the game mode, we do both feel that it could probably do with a bit of balancing, either with point allocation or with how much time you get in the game.
Yeah, for me, I felt the game was over too quickly. If one team doesn't have the best start, like the other team denies them their capture right off the bat, but get their own, then they get like a 20-point lead or something. There doesn't feel like there's enough time to then reverse that, or like if the comeback feels like it's building, you're slowly grinding them down, you're making the points catch up. It just feels like it'll just end before you have a chance at making a comeback. So there's no real tension for the team who got the early advantage. It just feels like they won it pretty much straight away from their initial rush.
Yeah. And then the second game mode is Raid. The game can last slightly longer than the game of Link, but it's much more tight quarters.
Yeah, so the defenders start defending one objective, and the attackers have 3 possible locations that could be. So they've got to theoretically move in, check them all out, and then capture the objective, or kill off the defenders, because you only get 1 life each on this game mode, which can make it a lot more tense. But for me, I felt the round times were like 7 minutes, which is way too long for this game mode. It can just leave people camping in the corner of a room for 5 minutes, having everyone else who is dead just being really bored, to be honest.
It's very rare that a round doesn't just end with one team having all their players killed.
Yeah. I think I've only ever finished 2 games by the objective being captured.
Yeah.
And I've played it quite a lot, so it can be done, but there's not really much point doing it. If you initiate the capture of the objective, it has a big announcement to everyone, so you can start capturing it, run off just to draw the defenders out. But it just feels wrong. It doesn't flow very well. Like, it's a legitimate tactic to bring out the defenders, but also it doesn't really encourage the defenders to defend the objective. Like, if they could secretly steal the data, as it were, without them getting knowledge that this is happening, I think it would be better.
Personally, I quite enjoyed Raid. I think it's probably my favourite game mode. I think attacking or defending is really fun, because like I said, it's tight quarters, and despite those tight quarters, chances are there's generally a lot more cover than you'd have access to in Link, so it opens up more possibilities for like strategic placement, for covering lines of sight and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, because the attackers can come from 4 different directions, so you can't just have your 5 guys make a massive firing wall and just mow them down right at the start. They could literally come from a lot of ways, which is why I like Clash so much, the third game mode. One team's attacking, they choose a point, and the other team has to then defend that objective. And then should the defenders win, they then go on the offensive and you try and capture one of the other team's bases. But there's another game mode where you only get the 1 life. These games can take quite a lot long because the maps are vast now. You get into the big open fields, there's like rural hillsides, then a town at the bottom of it, so you can either go really close urban fighting, try and flank around that way, or climb up into the hills, try and snipe down into the village or whatever. So there's a lot more ways you can play it, and this is where like smoke grenades and frag grenades will really come in handy, because you can then throw a line of smokes, block off line of sight into the objective, making the defenders then have to try and get a bit closer, denying them sniping opportunities. Then you can throw grenades into rooms to clear them. It just makes the whole game flow, I think, a bit better. I feel like this is the game mode that is more for, especially on the normal servers where you don't have the heads-up display with like an arrow pointing above your teammate.
Yeah.
So you can be like unsure when you've seen someone sprint through a field.
Couple of things to clarify. The map in this game is based on the map from the first Bohemia game, which was
Operation
Flashpoint. And each of your games will take place in a section of this large map taken from that game. And that might sound small, but trust me, it's not there. It's quite a sizable area. And the other thing that was mentioned as well is the normal servers. There's 2 different types of servers. There's easy servers, which you get your general sort of heads-up display and you get an arrow over your teammates, so you've got very little excuse for accidentally friendly firing someone. Whereas the normal servers, you don't get this, so it is actually possible to accidentally friendly fire a teammate. That being said, you do have a mini-map in the corner which shows their locations, so if you're paying attention to that, then you shouldn't accidentally kill your teammates. Personally, I think playing on the normal servers is a much better experience. It makes the game more tense and it makes it slower, which I think works for it because it promotes that use of tactics.
Yeah, you don't just go, oh, there's an arrow over his head, he's cleared that area, I can go now to the left sort of thing. You're going, is that a teammate, is that an enemy? I've only just seen a head bob up over a wall. Then you've then got to communicate with your teammate going, is that you or can I take the shot? And then if you take the shot and blow off your teammate's head, everyone will get a big message saying that you just friendly fired on. But usually, like most players I've found are pretty cool with getting team killed. They don't instantly flip out, start calling you this, that and the other. They're like, don't worry, we understand it can be tricky, especially in the heat of a firefight. If you just take a quick reaction shot, like the time to kill is pretty low. Like You can down people in 1 or 2 bullets quite easily. You get more life than in Arma, but it's still not like Call of Duty where you can sponge 5 bullets.
Yeah.
Then 360 no-scope someone.
Pretty much. There's one thing I do want to mention about Clash, though, which I feel is... Well, it's probably not an issue, but it will potentially be an issue for new players to the game, in that because it's so wide open and there's such a possibility for people to get the high ground far away in that map, if you don't have any kind of sort of mid to long range scope in that game mode, you might have a lot of trouble, especially if you get matched in a game with people that are a much higher level and you have access to more equipment.
Quite nicely leads on to our game balancing. Like, the game does need a balancing feature because, like saying, when you unlock like sniper rifles, you get a sniper scope, which changes the whole dynamic of the game. When I was playing it at a lower rank, I thought like, 7-minute game time, this is way too long. But once both teams have snipers and can be really far away, so you need to check every single position, having like a level 1 scope, you can't do that. It's only like a little holographic sight that doesn't give you a lot of information, but once you unlock a sniper scope, you can see through the small gaps in the foliage in the trees, you can see a tiny little bit of movement in a bush, and then you can go, there's a guy over there, right, we need to flank him, throw a few grenades in there and clear him out, otherwise he can just pick us all off here. So once you get into the higher tiers, it does make a lot more sense, but yeah, there does need to be a matchmaking feature because I've been in games with rank 1s and
pretty much clean house.
Yeah, it's really hard for a rank 1 to compete with a rank 9 or 10 who have unlocked these much more powerful scopes and weapons. Like, every gun can kill fairly fast, but if you can't lay down accurate fire like you can do with an improved scope, you just don't really stand a chance against these players.
Yeah. Should be noted, a developer of Bohemia did say in a Steam thread that while the quick play system they have in place will try and put you in a game that matches an appropriate level of ping and appropriate levels of players in the game, they have no plans as of now to implement a full-on matchmaking feature.
Yeah.
So don't hold out too much hope for that.
Saying that, the community depends. Sometimes I've had games where we've tried to match ourselves against like the top players against the top players and so on, just to try and help everyone out. But I've had servers where everyone has just jumped on the winning team, and if one team has started to lose and there's a space on the winning team, they jump ship and come on over, which...
Yeah. There are some quality of life issues that could be implemented, which would help the game immensely. But to move on to another game mode, actually, because I think I made a mistake before I said there were 3 game modes, but there is actually a 4th one that was added very recently.
The co-op. Combat Patrol.
Yeah, that's probably the one we generally like the least, although I think it has great potential, but it requires a lot of work. Basically, it's a team of 10, so not teams of 5 anymore, it's one team of 10, and you've got to complete objectives which could span across like generally the entire map. I'm not sure if it's random where the objectives are placed. I think you can choose where you spawn at the start, and then that's about it.
Like, you get to choose the location of where you want to fight, but it's a 10-man decision.
Yeah.
And you don't know where everyone else has voted. So it's a weird system that I think does need changing.
And then once you're in place, enemy AI will be spawned pretty much all over the map. And these AI aren't dumb. If anything, they're like quite smart. Like, as soon as you open fire on them, like even from miles away, they'll start pinging back at you, and they're quite accurate.
Yeah, if you've ever played Arma against the AI, you'll know that the AI can often be more dangerous than an actual player. They are really accurate, and as soon as you open fire, they know pretty much where you are and will lay down pretty effective fire almost instantaneously.
Yeah,
and they will hit the deck, and they won't make life easy for you, that's for sure.
Oh no.
My main gripe with it isn't the AI, it's more the fact that it's a team of 10. Just trying to coordinate with 10 people,
especially randoms.
Yeah, in a random lobby can lead to such a mess, especially when there's a lot of beginner players playing this mode who don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
And they're team killing and they're just running wild, basically. It led to a lot of confusing games for everyone involved. I don't know, I feel like with a smaller team, a team of 5, you'd then use a lot more communication, but because with 10, everyone just kind of like went into their own little world of, I'm just going to Rambo over here, take out these guys and die, and I'll respawn and do it again. But you do have a certain number of lives throughout your team, and when they're gone, that's game over for everyone. Yeah, with a smaller group, I think there'd be a lot more teamwork instead of just 10 lone wolves.
Yeah.
Duking it out with a load of AI.
That being said, though, if it does work, like I managed to get into one game where we were all working together and we had a guy like leading us, give us orders and stuff like that, and it works. It feels really good getting a proper 10-man co-op game going that way, but it takes a lot of hard work to get it going. That's the only problem.
It's a game mode that will benefit with everyone talking to each other, that's for sure. Then also the extraction as well. If everyone, to end the game, everyone needs to get to one location, and if one person doesn't, then the game can go on for as long as they are running around, basically.
And that's extra true if you get a spawning issue in that game, which leads us on to...
yeah, there's a few bugs. It's still... the version we've been playing is still a prototype, bearing in mind. It hasn't come into full release yet, it will do in a week's time. But there are a few random spawn issues where... I think the most common one is spawning with a random weapon with only one magazine, which isn't great, especially in a competitive game of Clash.
Oh yeah, like we said, if you're in a game of Clash, you need a scope, and so if you suddenly spawn with a weapon with no scope, that's not ideal.
Yeah, it really limits what you can do, especially with one magazine. You can't even throw down a load of inaccurate fire and hope that you'll hit them.
And then there's other things as well, like with the spawn. Like I've had it happen to me once where I've just spawned in a completely random location instead of spawning where you're supposed to spawn with your allies. I've just spawned on like the other side of a city where the enemy's been spawning, and just been really confused at work.
Yeah, there's a few bugs like that which I'm hoping will get fixed.
It's a bit disconcerting that they're still there a week before release, but hopefully they'll get patched. There are a couple of other issues as well, but they're relatively minor. Stuff like if you're trying to fire out of a window, it's difficult to judge where your weapon barrel is actually firing from, because obviously you'll see out your scope, you'll see enemies like, oh, fire, but then your barrel, because it's under the scope, it'll fire into the windowsill, which is annoying.
It's still got all those quirky little things on armour, which is fine in armour, but if they're trying to make it more tactical, quicker game, I don't think you should have those. I'm not sure if they can change where the bullets fire from, because in armour I think it simulates where they're shot out of the chamber. I don't think they can change that, but it certainly would benefit from that, because if you're trying to make a more competitive, tactical, fast-paced game, you don't want your players to be going, ooh, can I shoot out of this window, or will it just hit the small ledge in front of me, which has happened quite a few times, and your head is still sticking above the windowsill, so the enemy will just hear your shots and then ping you straight back.
Yeah. Of course, this might just be one of those things where it just might be like one of those quirks of the game that they just leave in. You've just got to work your way around.
Yeah.
Because it's not necessarily a bug, like we said. It's probably just like an actual feature left over from armour.
Yeah.
Which
you can overcome it because, as we were talking about earlier, you have full manipulation of your character. Like even when you're standing, if you hold control and press W, you like stand up even more, so you can get over these ledges. You raise the rifle a little bit higher to shoot over the ledge, but in the heat of a moment, you're not really thinking about that. Especially when they want to make it a faster game, things like that slow it down and make it a bit more methodical again.
Outside of that, think about improvements we'd personally like to see in the game.
Oh, definitely matchmaking for sure. The XP and the currency, I think, work in a way. It just slows down player progression, not too much, but I also don't feel like it was necessary, but I can see why they would put it in there, so a rank 10 person can't just join a game with a light machine gun, realise the whole enemy team's full of snipers, drop out of the lobby, unlock their sniper equipment because they've got enough points they can just reset and rebuy, and then jump straight back in the lobby and out-snipe everyone. So it makes you focus into more what gameplay you want to do.
Yeah.
But also, before you unlock things, you can go in the armory and test them, so there are ways so you don't make a bad decision. Yeah. A few other things I would want to say is mantling. Instead of being stuck on like something slightly bigger than a curb, your character seems unable to raise his leg over, which is a little bit annoying.
Yeah, for a game based on like one of arguably the most realistic shooters there is, it's quite a thing to miss out.
Yeah. Because in Arma you could mantle over fences and things, but here you can't, and they said there's no interest of adding jumping into the game, which would get rid of that. But there's a few little quality of life things, especially the matchmaking.
One minor thing I personally think it could do with is in the raid game mode, like I said, quite a small game mode, and the defenders have a relatively small area to cover. That area is also highlighted by a colour, which is annoyingly the same colour as your arrows in your minimap. So with that, combined with the fact that there's the three circle objectives in there, like
it
all
feels really cluttered.
Yeah, it's hard to tell where an ally is. Like I've had it happen to me a couple of times where I've accidentally shot or someone's accidentally shot me because they just couldn't really make out the mini-map properly.
Yeah, like the arrows on it are fairly large. Like, if you're all spread out around the square, it's fine. But as soon as things get a little bit more cluttered, you could do with a little bit of tidying up. Yeah, I see what you mean with that one.
In the loading screens, it does mention that the two different teams do wear slightly different clothes, but in the heat of the moment, it's very difficult to sort of like, oh, hang on, let's just take a couple of seconds just to look at their clothes, just to make sure it's on the other team.
Yeah.
Especially considering the fact that you can customize your character slightly, so you can have like different coloured like harnesses and stuff and helmets on. So I'm trying to like, oh wait, is that part of their customization or is that actually their team clothes?
Like the main difference is one team has sleeves and the other one doesn't, which is how generally I tell people apart. So if you're on the Flames who don't have sleeves, shoot everyone with a sleeve is the quickest way to describe it. But obviously for beginners that just isn't very practical.
Anything to summarise?
I've had fun playing it.
I've had lots of fun playing it, yeah.
It does make me feel like a more real life Counter-Strike, as it were. As a beginner, I'd say definitely start with Link though.
Oh yeah.
Because it's just a quicker game mode, you'd be a lot more used to the flow of things and it'll just get you into the habit of shooting, which can be slightly different from a lot of other FPSs.
I personally prefer Raid, but I think that's just my preference. I think either Link or Raid is definitely better to start with than Clash. Yeah,
Clash is too open, and that is where more experienced players will probably go to because they want the challenge of one life and having more tactical options than instead of Link, which can be, sometimes it's a straight up deathmatch.
Yeah.
And every now and then you capture a node.
One thing I feel we should mention in terms of improvements, we do think there should be a bit of balancing added in terms of how you get rewarded for like staying alive in a game and stuff like that.
Because in Clash, if you stay alive at like the end of the round time, you get a 200 bonus XP sort of thing. Like, yeah, you survived. But also, if your team loses the round and you stay alive, you can still get that, which I think rewards people for not trying to go for the objective. I'd rather have your whole team wiped out and no one get the point, but at least everyone's tried, than one person going, guys, I don't stand a chance here, I'm just going to sit at the back for the next 10 minutes.
Yeah. You do get massively rewarded for going for the objectives. Like, I've been in a game where I've only got 2 kills, and I still came out first in the match because I was focused on capturing objectives and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, it does allocate points really well. It punishes players who only go for kills, I think. Just because you don't get half as many points as you do for a kill as you do for capturing a single objective. And if you team kill, you lose 500 points.
Oh yeah.
Which is absolutely huge.
Yeah, because on average you'll get about, assume you've been playing well, you'll get about 1,500 points. 500 obviously is a lot. So yeah, one further question I'd like to add. If they implemented all or at least some of these improvements that we've mentioned, do you think this could compare to Counter-Strike in terms of being fun and competitive and just a generally great shooter?
And like the long life of it.
Yeah.
If it gets enough player base, I think it would stand a good chance. The problem I can see with not having a fair matchmaking system is that it'll be really fun at the start, but then once people unlock the better equipment, the improved scopes, etc., and they get matched against the beginners, that'll quickly put a lot of people off, because within my first 8 hours I was like, oh, this is really good fun. Then I got matched against higher ranking people who were literally killing me as I spawned. Like, I would run out of the compound and they would be set up with their sniper scope and just blew me away instantly. I'm like, how is this fair? So a few map tweaks, but basically the matchmaking, if you come against players like that and you don't know your way around the map or how the game works or the pacing of it, you really don't stand a chance. So if they can fix these problems, it could have a good long life.
Yeah.
And especially if like you're looking for a more team game and don't want to invest years learning Arma.
So, yeah, I think in summary, a game that can be very fun, a couple of bugs that'll hopefully be ironed out before full release in a week's time, and with a couple of improvements could be one of the next big shooters.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this interesting. See you next time, guys.
See you later.